very top of the Sierra Nevada mountains. On the southernmost part of the range, we're sitting at about 7,000 feet in a 500-acre old-growth sequoia forest. It's, I'd say, 3 steps closer to heaven than we were yesterday. In this place that we're sitting, half of this old-growth forest burned down last year, and half of these houses. They've never experienced a fire so hot that it burned the cones and the seeds. But that's exactly what's happened here. You know, it was thought that giant sequoias were fireproof. Well, they were wrong. You get a hot enough fire, they'll burn and they'll die. So the real magic is we've been in here working for 10 years, gathering and cloning the biggest, oldest 3,000-year-old sequoias and propagating and growing them in Michigan, just in case something like this happened, and it happened. And today, school children replanted the world's first old-growth giant sequoia forests with the sequoia genetics that's from here, that was lost, but it really wasn't lost. It lives on.
Drop it, Jack.
So there you go. Now we have our first tree planted.
Cameron, do that.
So the base of the tree right here, just hold it to secure it.
Tilt it upside down and pull it right out of there.
Hold it, yep.
But make sure you catch the tree before it comes out. That should be good.
I remember
That should be good. Throw it on down.
I remember ruining my
No, I can throw it. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
So just make sure you cover it. That's pretty good, huh? Look, wiggle it a little bit and feel it. Yeah.
We hooked up sensitive electronic vibrational equipment to a giant sequoia right over there with electrodes 250 feet on the branches up and an electrode into the ground on the roots. And for the first time in the history of the world, we listened to the vibrations or the music of the language of a 2,500-year-old giant sequoia.
You guys want to? Anybody want to touch the tree maybe and see what happens here?
Let's just do 2 at a time. Let's go on the line. Yeah, okay, 3 at a time is fine.
And later tonight, guys, I'm going to attach this tree to a light show too, so the tree will actually be conducting a light show and playing music at the same time.
And then we sent a guy up halfway up that tree with an electric guitar to play along with his electric guitar 50 feet, 100 feet in the air in a sequoia. Today we had 40 children participating and listening to the music of a 2,500-year-old giant sequoia and marveling at the idea that we can communicate with those beings. They have a consciousness just like we do. The restoration part is we need to begin to restore the forest lands the way that they were with the material they were, so those forests can help us hang around and reverse climate change, or we're not going to make it as a species. So there's paradigm shifts that went into place today of the way we do business with trees. What we realize how they communicate. Now we're playing music to their tune. And if we work with them, they just might save us as a species on this planet. Well, here we are, back at in Coatbish at the propagation facility. And I've been asked to try and explain 2 weeks ago, we were on an expedition, our latest expedition, and we've been doing expeditions here in the United States. We've done expeditions over in England and Ireland about trying to find and locate the world's biggest and oldest trees. So 2 weeks ago, the Archangel Team, about 20, 25 of us, we all headed from different parts of the country. Rip came from Maine. He's one of our climbers. Mariana came from Texas. She put all the expeditions together for us and figured it out. I came from Michigan. Some people came from New Mexico. Kimmy, who does all the fundraising for us. And people want to know, what's it like to be on an expedition? They've read about it. This last expedition that we did in Sequoia Crest. Where is Sequoia Crest? It's in the Sierra Nevada mountains on the southern part of the range, at about 7,000 feet in altitude. In the last 12 to 15 miles is one of the most hairpin, dangerous, over the precipice, thousands of feet drop, drive up the mountain to a 500-acre parcel of land that is on the very top of the Sierra Nevada range in the most southern part of that range. The only moisture normally that gets up there is winter snow melt. In the summer, it gets 95 to 100 degrees, but that 500 acres is the last intact old growth giant sequoia forest. It is otherworldly in beauty. It is otherworldly in the size of these trees. The sequoias on top of Sequoia Crest that we were invited to try and clone and work in, some of those trees are 33 to 35 feet in diameter of the trunks. So imagine a wall of wood 35 foot across, and that's the diameter of the base of the trunks of these 3,000 plus year old trees. You can Google up waterfall giant sequoia, and you can Google up stag giant sequoia. There's pictures of those trees. They're iconic trees for sequoias around the world. And we were given a challenge in California. We had been successful cloning 2,000-year-old coast redwoods. They live in Northern California, from the Oregon border down to Big Sur, but in the southern Sierra Nevadas, we were challenged to see if we could do 1,000-year-old redwood, sequoia. The oldest giant sequoia 10 years ago ever successfully cloned was 80 years old. So the academics in California and the silviculture experts said, the oldest giant sequoia they don't like to be cloned is 80 years old. We kind of, we'd like to see you, see if you could, do a sequoia that's 1,000 years old. So we actually went to Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and there was a 300 or 400-year-old sequoia that the Daughters of the American Revolution planted way back when. And we tried practicing on that one, and voila, it worked. So we had the new record of a 200 or 300-year-old sequoia. Then my son Jake and Michael Taylor found this lost grove on the top of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, with the world's largest and oldest giant sequoias, larger than General Sherman, but lightning had sheared the tops off because they're on the top of the mountains. So by volume, they were not by volume the largest giant sequoias, but by diameter of the trunk, they are. So Jake found those with Michael Taylor. He called me. I was in Northern California, said, Dad, get down here. We found them. So I immediately, by plane and by car, made the 700-mile trek down to Sequoia Crest. And I joined my son and Michael Taylor up in Camp Nelson. That's a small town up in the mountains. And Jake showed me these enormous 35-foot diameter, 3,000-year-old plus giant sequoias. So that was our challenge 10 years ago, to see if we could climb them. Get the material off the very tops. And we knew that from practice that one of the reasons others had failed is because they took the material off the lower branches. Now, mind you, the lower branches are at about 110 feet. So the branches start at 110 feet and go up to 350 feet. So we knew from experience that we had to go to the very top of these sequoias, then out to the end of the branches to look for this year's new growth. That's the key. But to find climbers that could go up 350 feet on top of the Sierra Nevada mountains and unclimbed giant sequoias, then out to the end of those branches, that is really, really, really dangerous. My son Jake led that team with Rip Tompkins, and we're going to show a video of his. He was out there 2 weeks ago with us on our latest expedition. And that's when we got started on the waterfall, stag, and we've cloned 8 giant sequoias that are all over 2,500 years old to over 3,000 years old. And we've been working in Sequoia Crest for 10 years. Well, to make a long story short, excuse me, when we were successful, having these giant sequoias form a root, that made the front page of the New York Times. It made world press yet once again. Here are trees that were 1,000 years old when Jesus walked the earth. They were already 1,000 years old when Jesus was walking the earth. And we had cloned them and reproduced them so that they could live on, start their timeline again. And it was really a big deal. One of the side projects of that project, it was 3 or 4 years ago, my son Jake and some other team members of Archangel said, "Hey, Dad, we don't want to plant over 10% of clone trees in reforestation. We want 90% seedlings and 10% clones for genetic diversity." He said, "Why don't we gather the cones from waterfall and stag? Stag is the 5th largest tree in the world. Waterfall is actually larger than that, but part of the trunk, 30 feet of the trunk, got backfilled by a logger, just skid logs." So Jake and Rip were the first 2 people to climb stag and waterfall from our group, these enormous trees, and got the material from the very tops and out the ends. We brought it down, overnighted it, FedExed it back here to the propagation facility, and we worked on it. And lo and behold, it worked. So we had living clones of 8 of the largest trees, but we needed seedlings for genetic diversity. So 4 or 5 years ago, our climbers went out on another expedition, and we gathered hundreds and hundreds of cones from stag and waterfall, shipped them back here. And the first round, we made 10,000 seedlings of stag and waterfall. 10,000, that's a lot. But we had the cones from those trees. There were only 50% genetics of those trees to interplant with the clones of those trees, so we'd have genetic diversity. 2 weeks ago, we went back, and for the first time, we brought 150 giant sequoias from stag and waterfall seedlings. They were about 18 inches tall, 18 inches wide. We put them on a truck, shipped them out to Sequoia Crest, because last year, half of that forest burned to the ground, and half the cabins that were up there. The Castle Fire consumed 175,000 acres, and one of the trees that died in that fire was waterfall. So here we had on our hands seedlings and clones of one of the greatest giant sequoias that ever lived. And we decided to go back, Archangel Ancient Trees, and bring this project full circle and to emphasize restoration. It's time to restore the forests that have been lost by fire or other natural disasters or are dying from drought because of climate change. So we did that 2 weeks ago. 20 some of us went out there, and we asked school children from that area to help us plant 150 stag and waterfall duplicates on the land that burned down in that forest. And we put waterfall will live on now for another 3 years because of those efforts. But the restoration is the key here. It's time to restore our forests in our inner cities, urban forests, our native forests in this country. 98% of our old growth forests have been cut down, 98%. In California, 95% of the coast redwoods have been cut down. They're gone. It only leaves 5%. We've decimated and destroyed the world's native forest. to a degree where it threatens the life of all mammals, including humans, because of not studying and not understanding the importance that trees and their aerosols and what they provide for humans and all mammals and living things. We haven't just worked on sequoias and redwoods, by the way. We've done 130 different species of trees here in the United States, Ireland, and England. We did 1,000-year-old oaks that the Druids found us in Ireland. We did 22 of those, and those live on. So what I'm trying to say is the era of preservation is over, and we failed miserably. Human beings failed miserably to preserve our oceans, our reefs, our fishes. We failed miserably on almost every category environmentally that's known to man. The extinction rate, is 7,000 species a month or some ridiculous amount of things. So we need to refocus. We need to have a paradigm shift, which we did in Sequoia Crest 2 weeks ago. It's time to think about this paradigm shift of restoration. If we don't restore and put back our native ecosystems, our existence on this planet as humans is really in doubt. But we can do this. So as a model for the world of how you rebuild and restore an old growth forest, we did 2 weeks ago in Sequoia Crest with the sequoias. It got international media attention. AP wrote a story, put it out around the world. Chicago Tribune carried it, Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian over in England. So what I'd like to focus the importance on to you is the era of restoration. There's not enough left to preserve to save us as a species. It's time to shift our thinking into restoration. But how do you do that, and who can do that? We used school children to do that 2 weeks ago as a model of hope for the world. So we're really, really hopeful that if we all together in a concerted effort, the people of the world do this, we can help reverse climate change back to the levels of carbon that was in the late 50s and early 60s. So why are sequoias and redwoods so important in this effort to go after climate change and reverse it? Because they grow 10 times faster than most species of trees. So that means they suck in CO2 10 times faster than most species of trees on Earth. And they produce oxygen, the other side of the coin most people fail to look at, 10 times faster than most species. So like I alluded to, or I mentioned earlier, one giant sequoia is 1,100 tons dry weight. 40% of a giant sequoia dry weight is stored carbon. That's 400 to 500 tons per tree dry weight of stored carbon. That's how you go after, that's how you help reverse climate change. So we need to find the sequoias, the native trees, continent by country, country by country, and go after the oldest, hardiest, the best trees to help reverse this scourge of climate change, make millions and millions and millions of these available to school children, and that will be the army that we hope to harness to help reforest this planet. But and the other side benefit to all of this is that we're building archival living libraries of the genetics of the great species of trees country by country. With your help, we can go to those genetic libraries and we can, with tissue culture and micropropagation, make hundreds of millions of copies, the exact genetic copies of the strongest, oldest, best trees to be utilized in reforestation efforts. I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, Tom Wall. Tom was with us. Maybe you've seen him on our website or in some of the media. Tom and I set a goal several months back that Archangel would be the leader globally in tree-human communication. Now, indigenous people around the world for tens of thousands of years have talked to trees and understood what trees are saying to us. Can you imagine the stored wisdom of a species of trees that's been on Earth 300 million years longer than humans? So Tom's coming up. He's going to work with our harnessing the energy of the tree and interpreting that in music. But right now I have a special treat. One of the original climbers with my son, Jake Millark, was Rip Tompkins. He lives in Maine. He's been with us for 12 years. He was the first climber of the big giant sequoias at Sequoia Crest with Jake. And he's done a short video. 2 weeks ago, we asked him to return to climb some of the trees, get some more material. And he went to the very top of the largest giant sequoia that we could find, climbed it, and he'll be doing his interview with his head poking out 350 feet in the air on top of 3,000-year-old giant sequoia. So I think you're going to find that really interesting. The world owes Rip Tompkins a huge debt of gratitude for risking his life, teaching our Archangel's climbers how to get to the top of the world's tallest and oldest trees. And we've been asked over and over again, what's it like? What's it like up in the canopy of a 2,000 to 3,000-year-old tree? My son, Jake Millark, and several other climbers invented a rope elevator 3 or 4 years ago where anybody, regardless of age, 7 years old, 90 years old, can put on a harness, hook onto a rope, and be towed up with a counterbalance 250 feet. You can do this in the canopy of a 3,000-year-old tree. So that's one of the ways that we're getting the media, we're getting school children. We could get you up there so you can experience what it's like in that tree. So now let's take a peek together at Rip's fascinating interview atop a 3,000-year-old giant sequoia 2 weeks ago.
Greetings, my friends. I'm up here at the top of an amazing giant sequoia. It's Wednesday. I forget the date. I think it's the 27th of October. We're at Sequoia Crest, California, part of the Alder Creek Grove that was devastated last year by the Castle Fire and lost thousands of sequoias. Here on a mission with Archangel Ancient Tree Archives, we planted 150 seedlings, clones of the waterfall tree and the stag tree, the two most iconic trees in this grove area. They have been taken over the years by Archangel, and we've replanting in areas that lost trees. And we're also taking more cuttings here so that we can clone more trees and continue the cycle. At any rate, it's amazing being up here. I want to just give you a little look at the view to the west. There we are, down some of the houses, some of the ones being rebuilt. You can probably even hear carpenters working below me. Just want to tell you I'm blessed to be here, and please climb safely, my friends, and we'll see you down the road somewhere. Cheers.
So for those of you who watched the video during our break, you were able to see some more behind the scenes from our expedition.
Start right here and I'll work over to here.
So Tom, you'll be on in just a second. Tom's getting ready here. And another big part of our expedition was Tom's live tree music. And so we wanted to give you another sneak peek into that. And Tom is going to be setting up for a live tree music concert right now. But between the videos that you were able to see during the break and the climbing videos and Tom, we hope you can get a little taste for what our Sequoia Crest expedition was. So Tom, you have the stage, and we can't wait to see the trees play some music.
All right, so we are here at the Archangel Ancient Tree Archive, and what are we here to do? We are currently experimenting with plant communication. Now, what does that mean? Well, currently we are actually in the form of music with plants. So what we're doing is we have a device called the Music of the Plants device, and it hooks up through 2 electrodes onto the tree and then interprets the tree's electromagnetic fluctuations into music. But that's not all we're trying to do down here. So the music is just the start of the journey and the basic Rosetta Stone of what we're trying to look into. But we know that plants have the ability to communicate with us. We most usually think that communication is a verbal thing, but it is not just a verbal thing. So we can see when a plant is sick or when it's having adverse conditions. So that means that there must be some kind of way for these plants to communicate with us. The ones that have worked with plants for many years know that there's that connection there. They can feel it inherently, and they know there's more than they understand that goes along with this. But most people in everyday life don't understand that. So what we're trying to do is show the abilities for plants to communicate. Now, the beginnings of that are with music, and that's what we're here to do, is to have these trees behind me play music with me. But we're going to take that a step farther. We're going to put a form of verbal communication to that as we go farther and as we analyze the data as we get all this. So for now, what I'm going to do is hook up the device, and we hook up one to the leaf and then one to the root, and I'll show you. So, oh no. And per usual, we need a plug-in cord because this thing died on me, even though it said I had plenty of charge. So I'm stuck in the middle of this right now. Let me, yeah, I just need a port. Do you have one, Carissa? The USB. But in the meantime, while we're getting the port to plug this in, I really want people to think about what thoughts are made of and what we can do to try and understand what's really going on, because there's a connection in nature that people have overlooked for what seems to be generations. And from what David says, it's definitely something that the Native Americans were very, very understanding of. And this connection in nature is something that needs to be sought after, and without it, there's no way we're ever going to be able to take care of the planet the way we are, because we are nature itself. And many don't understand that we are nature itself, and what we do is nature, but we are a part of the working global biosphere of the earth. So if we don't take care of the earth, we are literally not taking care of ourselves. So what we really want to do is focus in on the connection that's in nature, so we understand that we are what we are, which is nature itself. All right, so back to our electrodes here. We have one for the root, and this is a probe. That's just a regular spike that's hooked up to the device here, and we're going to hook this into the soil here. And then we have one that is a clamp that goes onto the leaf of the tree. And in this case, we're going to hook it out to the needles on this coniferous plant. So hook it up to some new growth down here and see how it goes. It takes a minute. We have music playing, so let's turn it on and see what it sounds like. Might be a little bit shy right now. These are some younger tree or some younger branches. So. Let's try another branch and see. Ooh, might not want me to. Let's try another branch here. See how it goes. We want to end this with David coming in and reacting with the tree, so we can show that there is an energy going on here. So as you can see, you know your trees better than anybody, David. Let's turn it back over to you. All right. The tree's a lot happier when you touch it. It was much happier once you took over. Well, you know, we're late to the game. Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I think this is a good start. It's a good start. I'd like to thank everybody so far for having the interest and the patience to, this is our first try at all this. I hope you found it interesting, and stay tuned. There's a 45-minute question and answer period that myself and Jared, my son, and Jake, my son, it says, ask us anything. Well, ask us almost anything, but we're ready to field any questions about anything that you've seen or you heard, and we'll do our very best to try and answer those. So if you have any questions about anything, if you have any comments about anything, now's your time. We'd like to hear what you're thinking, and we'd like to answer what we can. So, are we ready for that? Let's do it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom and David. And we will see y'all in the next session. It'll be much more interactive with David, Jake, and Jared for, as David said, an Ask Me Anything, 45 minutes. So if you were asking any questions today that weren't answered, now's your time. And yes, everyone come on in the camera. Thank you for the whole team in Michigan to helping us getting this done. Thanks, guys. Y'all are awesome.
Thanks.
Okay, everyone, we'll see you in the next session.